everyone. I'm Phoebe Robinson, actress, comedian, and fully anointed reducator. If you don't know what a reducator is, you're about to get reducated. Ow! As we speak with badass women, learn some thought-provoking stats, and walk away with some real actions. To kick off Summer Rediscovered, I'm super excited to invite you all inside the parens as we discuss some of the systemic issues that women and girls face amid global pandemics such as COVID and AIDS. This is Red's 15th year. Oh my God, happy anniversary. And since the day that my man Bono, okay, I didn't make this pillow, but I do have a Bono pillow. And his friend Bobby Shriver started the organization. It's been turning companies into a global force to fight the world's biggest health emergencies. These emergencies, such as AIDS and COVID, flourish in communities where poverty and discrimination based on race, gender, and sexual orientation thrive. Red, together with partners, supporters, and collaborators like me, are sounding the alarm on injustices of global health and raising cold, hard moolah for programs that save lives. I have been working with Red since 2017. It's been one of the greatest honors and privileges of my life. I've done things such as like host fundraisers here in the States, and I'm based in New York. And done a lot of like New York based, sort of LA based events. But I think the biggest thing about becoming a reducator is when I got the opportunity to travel to Zambia in 2019. I just feel that like while it's good to like know the information, know the stats, and host events, it's not the same as being able to have the opportunity to go on the ground and see exactly where everyone's dollars are going and how they're making people healthier and saving lives. And I think one of my favorite memories from Zambia, I have so many, is the PEPFAR Dream Center in Zambia. And I got to meet the most incredible group of girls and teenagers who are writing plays and sketches to help educate their peers on sexual reproductive health education and other HIV prevention services. I also met a bunch of women who found their own business collective. This is something that I wish I was doing as a teenager. And it ranged from the women were selling clothes, sanitary pads, grains, rice, all kinds of products. And what was the coolest aspect of it is that they all the teenagers and women, they took a percentage of their profits and put it back into a community pot to like help make their businesses even stronger and more financially sound, which I thought was so cool and amazing. So anyway, that is one of my favorite things about being a reducator, is seeing exactly with my own eyes, like the work and the impact that Red is having and that you guys are having. But I have some stats to share for you. I'm not going to try and overwhelm you, but we got to just sort of like set the landscape so we know exactly what we're dealing with today's conversation. So first up, did you know that women and girls account for more than half of all people living with HIV globally? Or that AIDS is the leading cause of death among adult women in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's the second leading cause of death among adult women worldwide? Whew, that's sobering. And as we think about the impact of COVID, did you know that for every 3 months of COVID-19 lockdowns worldwide, an additional 15 million cases of gender-based violence is expected? Holy hell, that is so unacceptable. That is heartbreaking. And that is something that we can all help change. So we continue to see women and girls bear the greatest burden of pandemics. And it's often poverty, inequality, and insufficient access to education and health services that are putting them at risk. Whew, that is a lot. So let's all just breathe. Okay. So to help me speak about these issues, I couldn't think of a better group of women to join me than, first up, Meena Harris, founder and CEO of Phenomenal. Second, Alexis McGill Johnson, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And finally, Beatrice Dixon, founder and CEO of the Honey Pot Company. Honey Pot Company has saved me many times during my travels. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. We have so much to talk about in so little time, so I want to jump right in. I feel like the best way to start is for each of you to go around and give sort of like a very sort of like 90-second, 2-minute sort of origin Batman Begins story about yourself and how you got into your current role. So let's start with you, Meena.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be in this conversation. I'm Meena Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Phenomenal, which is a media and lifestyle brand that centers underrepresented communities and in particular women of color. I have a very long origin and Batman story, which is I never thought I would be here doing what I'm doing today, which really feels like I'm living my dream. But I'm a lawyer by training. I'm now a recovering lawyer. I'm a mom, I'm a kids book author, and I am just really excited to be part of this conversation.
Ooh, that was good. I love that. I love the recovering lawyer. That was hilarious. Okay, let's go to you, Alexis.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you guys. I am President and CEO of Planned Parenthood. Y'all know Planned Parenthood. We're the nation's leading provider of high quality, affordable sexual and reproductive health care for all people. We are the largest provider of sex ed. We have affiliates across all 50 states providing healthcare, more than 600 health centers and 2.4 million people a year. So, we are here. We are a 104-year-old organization, been around providing this care, but also knowing that the advocacy that we need to do in order to protect the care that we so desire is completely under attack. So this year alone, we have been fighting more than 500 abortion restrictions in 47 states. The Supreme Court has taken up a case in Mississippi. So our work and our role is both to provide care and make sure everybody has access to it and defend that access so that everybody can make decisions about their own bodies.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. And finally, Beatrice.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me here. It's really great to be among all of you wonderful ladies. But I'm Beatrice Dixon, co-founder and CEO of the Honey Pot Company. We are a plant-based feminine hygiene company that really focuses on all things as it relates to vaginal health and hygiene. The reason why I got started in this business is because I had an almost year-long bout with bacterial vaginosis. It was terrible, and nothing that I did worked. And my grandmother came to visit me in a dream and basically handed me a piece of paper that had a formula that happens to be our normal feminine wash. And, I woke up from the dream. I wrote it down. I wrote down what she told me. I made it within a couple of days. I started using it, and 4 to 5 days later, everything that I was dealing with went away. And that's how I got started in this business, because immediately my thought was, if this could work for me, then this could work for other humans with vaginas. So that's how I got started.
I love that. All of you are so
Thank
accomplished
you.
and talented. So I want to start the conversation with a question to the group, and then I'll, sort of like dedicate a question to each person. But this is a conversation, this is a discussion. So feel free to jump in and chime in whenever you want. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to restrain yourself. Okay, so to start things off, my first question is, amid the current COVID pandemic, what are some of the biggest concerns and challenges you've witnessed when it comes to the rights and well-being of women and girls? I'll open it up to everyone.
But quickly, I mean, that's obviously a very, very big question, and I'm excited to hear from Alexis and Beatrice based on your expertise. Obviously, this pandemic has touched the lives of women and girls in so many ways. For me, I really think about, women in the workforce, and what we are seeing is record numbers of women who are leaving the workforce because the burden and the crushing experience of this pandemic has been too much to bear. And that is a reflection of a lot of things, but, most simply it's that the gender inequities that exist in the workplace, that exist in our homes, are, setting women up for failure, and they're no longer able to do everything that they were, carrying before. And so I've often, in this, now we're in a year and a half in, right, and we're still seeing this, have talked about, this notion of rejecting going back to normal, because normal was clearly not working for so many women, for working families, or else, they would not be leaving the workforce in record numbers. And what does that mean, right? It means, are we providing, policies that allow for flexible work and remote work that we know have a disproportionate impact on caretakers, right, who are literally juggling every day caretaking duties with working? Are we, providing other support mechanisms for women to do everything, which we know that we are doing, right? So that we can actually succeed and achieve in the workplace. So I hope that, this moment, as hard as it has been, both on, the economy and women, again, who are carrying so much of that, that we are able to take a hard look at the gaps, right, that existed well before this pandemic started, and really, look at the learnings and the consequences of that through this crisis, and think about how we can better support working mothers, families, coming out of this as the workplace and offices start to reopen again.
Amen. I know, Alexis, you were wanting to chime in with something here, so happy to pass it
Yeah,
back to
I
you.
mean, amen, and add all of that, a layer of systemic racism. so COVID-19,
Exactly.
the workplace,
Yep.
and then racism, right? So I think this year has really demonstrated, I'm sure what we've all been saying for a long time, right? The racism is a public health emergency, but COVID really revealed these deep disparities in the healthcare system, particularly for Black, Latinx, and Indigenous communities. And, when I think about how all of these crises impacted, women and girls, especially, hit hard, we're the caregivers, we're the essential workers, and the most likely to leave the workforce. And the policies, to Meena's point, listening to the kinds of restrictions around getting basic access to healthcare during the pandemic. It's almost as if like frontline workers, oftentimes women of color were being constantly told our bodies were essential, but then the freedom to actually make those decisions was being undermined by policies in the state. And, when it impacts Black and brown and low income communities, having our voice there at the table to be able to say like, no, that we're not going back has been really, really important.
Oh, that's so smart and so sage. Beatrice, do you have anything else you want to chime in with?
Phoebe, honestly, Meena and Alexis covered it all because they both said everything that I was going to say. But the other thing that I would say is it hasn't only affected, women and girls. This has affected every human, I think. you know, I think that it has affected communities because I just want to be careful and conscientious because constantly, and it's with good reason, but constantly we focus on women and girls. But there are men out there that are single men, or could be the only caregiver at home. I think that this has just affected humanity. It's obviously affected, you know, Black and brown people and minorities the most. The way that I think it's probably affected even young girls is having to, if their mom or if their mom was the only caregiver, the only person working, they're probably going to have to be the ones that are helping to help with the other children and make sure that everything's okay, right? Like I definitely know that, in the Black community, like when I was young, I would go home every day and I would have to take care of myself, you know, and that is definitely something that is happening now. So I can't really, I can't say anything more than what Meena and Alexis have said because it's a real thing and it's going to take time for us to recover. And even bigger than that, for us to understand what needs to happen so that we can recover and so that we can actually bring change to the system, because this can't work, obviously, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'd
absolutely.
like to add to,
What?
just Alexis, thank you for mentioning racism, right? I think that's really important to
Mm-hmm.
underscore that, to Beatrice's point, you're having sort of general conversations about women and girls, but, in terms of politics and the economy and what we are seeing
Mm-hmm.
across the country, we have to make sure that racial justice is a part of every single conversation, right? And
Exactly.
that it applies to paid leave, it applies to healthcare, it applies to environmental justice. All of these issues are racial justice issues, and it cannot be a standalone issue, right? Like when we talk about intersectional feminism and the layered discrimination and experience and crisis that communities, right, are fighting right now, goes to that, right? And so we're fighting for women and girls and moms, and leaving Black and brown women and girls and moms out of that, out of the movement, out of those solutions.
Mm-hmm.
That is not feminist, and that will never get us to solutions and equality. And so I know that we're all always thinking about that, but I think it's important, as Alexis did, to call that out and be very, very clear, right? That we have to be, talking about that first and foremost.
It's always the
Absolutely.
elephant in the room, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Now I want to direct this to you, Alexis. When we think about the impact of COVID on women and girls' reproductive health, what are some of the steps that Planned Parenthood is taking to ensure the advancement of our health and rights now and in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, much of, I love how we just are all connecting to each other's points, because it really is about having an intersectional frame for us. And that also includes, it allows us to include men, it allows us to include trans communities, communities that oftentimes don't have voice in these conversations. And so, like, as I said, Planned Parenthood, during this time is really focused on continuing to provide care. People did not actually stop having sex just because there was a pandemic. They still needed access to birth control. They still needed access to abortion, STI testing. And we've seen STIs actually be on the rise during the pandemic. So we have been just trying to make sure our doors are kept open, that we could be there providing care, and also expanding telehealth, which means increasing access for rural communities, as well as our communities. And I think part of that fight is ensuring that we're battling restrictions on everything from education to trans experience to to some of these other diabolical restrictions on access. But it also means like fighting for things like broadband, right? Because like if you're going to deliver healthcare, because we're probably not going back to not having being able to see our providers online, it means we need to make sure that communities that need the most access have the best access there. So we're continuing to work there, and of course working very closely with the Biden-Harris administration, who has been like such a joy breath air after what we've endured, particularly in the last 4 years around these issues. So I think it's really important that we are, again, fighting for our health, but also maintaining the fight at a very high level around our rights, because they are being rolled back.
I love that. That's incredible. I want to step on over to Meena for a second. And I want to ask you this. So fashion has long been a form of activism. And so we're super excited to speak about your phenomenal brand. Can you walk us through how you amplified your platform to address social justice and inequality during COVID?
Yes. Well, first, a lot of people know us as a fashion brand or an apparel brand, and we really think of ourselves as a media company. And in that way, the work that we do is really about amplifying and elevating the work of folks like Alexis, right? Who are advocates and activists who are on the ground, who are providing services to communities, who are doing this work day in and day out, and figuring out creative ways through media, through messaging, through content, to bring that work and those issues and that policy agenda to a mainstream audience, right? So our in year one, and I kind of alluded to this when I introduced myself, I never thought that I would be here 4 years later still talking about Phenomenal. It started off as a very small idea to raise money for women's organizations like Planned Parenthood right after the 2016 election. If you remember that very dark moment, a lot of people were stepping up and they were hosting fundraisers for the ACLU and Planned Parenthood and other civil rights organizations. And that was what we did. We just wanted to do our part and do anything that we could. And it kept going and going and going. So, here we are 4 years later, and you asked about COVID, right? And what we've done. There have been two particular activations that I'm really proud of, one of which is still ongoing. The first is Pro-Vaxxer, which is, again, taking this, public health issue that has a lot of complexities, thinking about, the national dialogue and how we can help to shift that dialogue to really focus on the experiences of communities of color and underrepresented communities. What does that mean? It means that, right now, as we are sitting here having this conversation, this one of the biggest public health crises that, we've experienced as a country is still about equity, right? It's still about access. It's still about the fact that globally, Black and brown communities who want the vaccine, right? This is not about misinformation when we're talking about these communities. They actually want the vaccine. They can't get it, right? For a variety of reasons around equity and access. So that's what we look at in terms of our role in our platform. How do we raise awareness around that? How do we make sure that people who do have vaccines, who are privileged, right, and are going about their lives, understand that there are still lots of communities who are in need, and figure out how we can amplify the work of the organizations and folks who are on the ground who are helping to provide those services to those communities. So that's one. And then another is, early on when, COVID first hit the United States, of course, we saw this rise in anti-Asian racism, which was encouraged by the president at the time. And as we have seen in the last, several months, has continued again, right? And so we brought back our Phenomenally Asian campaign. And it's really simple. It's really, again, understanding that, this is a serious issue. It's not a positive issue. It's very sad and harmful, right? But we come to it with the perspective of, let's lift up the Asian community. Let's celebrate ourselves. Let's create power in our voice and our pride, and showing, visibility, right? And finding our voices to push back against those harmful narratives and dynamics that we're seeing. So those are two big campaigns that we've done during COVID that I'm proud of. And I look forward to, being able to continue to support the work of folks like Alexis, who are really doing the work day in and day out and taking care of our communities and making sure that people know about it and can support those agendas, whether it's wearing a shirt that is, wearing your support on your chest, or making a donation to those organizations, or otherwise just carrying forward, the messaging and agendas that we want people to be engaged with.
That's amazing.
Got my
Incredible. So
shirt.
thank you.
Oh, do you? Oh, awesome. I was gonna say, I should have worn mine or made sure that I got you guys one. So I love it. You already have it.
I
So I
actually
want to move on
used
over
it taking my daughter to get vaccinated, my 12-year-old, this weekend. She got her second shot, and I was proudly wearing it.
It's one of the, it's such a small,
Amazing.
even almost like seemingly insignificant things, but I had a similar experience where I flew for work for the first time in, a year and a half. And I wore my pro-vaxxer sweatshirt, because what better way, to show it than in an airport. And sure enough, 5 minutes in, I'm going through TSA, and a TSA agent sees it and he says, "Oh, me too." And then he starts, excitedly telling me about how when he's going to get a second shot. And it's just, it's a conversation starter. There's so much power in something so small. So I love that about taking your daughter while wearing it.
That's so cute. And yeah, like you said, I think it's a great icebreaker to sort of just, it's easy in for people to sort of like connect and bond over and sort of remember. I think sometimes people forget that we're all in this together. Like every single person on this planet is experiencing COVID right now. And so just having those little moments, whether it's a pro-vaxxer t-shirt or what have you, like it just really helps people be like, oh yeah, let me connect with this person because we're going through the same thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to move on over to Beatrice. Before I ask you your question, I have some exciting news hot off the press. Okay, so I'm excited to announce that Red's The Honey Pot collection of feminine care products is now available exclusively at Amazon.com/Red. Yay!
Yay!
Percentage of every product will go to the Global Fund to support life-saving health services, including programs that empower and educate women and girls in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, Beatrice, can you let us know what this partnership means to you and how you're empowering women through your products?
This partnership means everything. I've always respected and loved the work that Red has done. And, and so for us to be able to contribute to something that I've respected and watched for so long is kind of a personal experience for me. The other thing is we've actually really built out our CSR impact program that we'll actually be launching. This is actually one of the first parts of our impact program that's become public information. And then we have four other nonprofit organizations that we're going to be working with. But it's exciting, it's beautiful to be able to be an example of the change that you want to be in the world. And it's exciting to be able to contribute to to everything that RED stands for. You know, it's amazing what illness and and what it's amazing what illness can do to a community, how it can just ravish through it, you know. And what AIDS has done in sub-Saharan Africa is awful. And so, you know, it's just important. You know, it's something that I've always wanted to contribute to. And we were never really able to get our CSR off the ground until now. And so when the opportunity presented itself last year, but we just weren't in the place to be able to do it. And so I'm just incredibly grateful that we're here now, you know, that we actually have a product that can work, that we're actually comfortably able to, you know, to split that profit the way that we are. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and I'm happy that we're here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm really grateful that Red wants to work with Honey Pot. You know, that is an honor, you know, and yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I'm happy for this opportunity, and I'm happy that we're able to contribute. I'm happy that we have a product line. We're actually going to be using our non-herbal menstrual pads. Actually, excuse me, let me back up. We're using our clean cotton menstrual pads, and that we actually turn those pads red. And so it'll be our regular super overnight and our panty liners. We just launched like 3 new lines of pads. So I got my wires crossed. But yeah, so it's exciting. It's a beautiful opportunity. And again, I'm just grateful that Red would allow us to be a part of such a powerful mission.
Well, you're helping to change the game, so it's honestly like no surprise that they want you on board. Okay, so we are running out of time, so I want to ask you guys one last question. This is for the whole group. All of you are badass bosses, right? So how has COVID reshaped your role as a CEO? Like, what advice would you give a young woman who's watching this conversation today?
Mm. Can I start?
Of
You
course.
know, this last year for me, which is contrary to what most people say, this last year has probably been one of the best times of my life. You know, we were able to really this year started off very tumultuous. We had a viral moment, and then COVID happened, and you know, it was really painful, everything that happened, because we went out of stock online. Like, we didn't have product to sell for nearly 6 or 7 months on our website. We were hardly able to fulfill our retail orders. But what it did is it shined a light on the issues that we were having within our company. And it allowed us to be able to get in and understand what we needed to do to fix it. And we're still working on that, you know. And I think that what's important to remember, like you said earlier, Phoebe, that we're all connected in this. We're all connected, and everybody on the planet is dealing with COVID, right? Every company on the planet has had to pivot and do something else because, you know, there was nothing else that you could do. One day we could go to work and the next day we couldn't, right? And so companies were developing apps and doing things that they never, I mean, even you, Meena, you said, I didn't even realize that we would be here right now, you know? So I think even though it has been crazy and it's been scary, and, you know, and so much death has happened and so many communities have been affected terribly, I think that the dope thing is that we're actually having this conversation, and that we're here, and that the light has been kind of really put on where there's issues, and now you can't just sweep these issues under the rug anymore, because now it's such a public thing. So I think that it's just a really beautiful, even though it's been hard, and even though things are difficult, you know, it's actually been quite a beautiful time, because at least we know what we have to work on. At least it's out so that everybody can see. And I'm in so many conversations like this, and so the fact that these conversations are happening all the time, whether it's a Clubhouse or a Zoom or, you know, or an Instagram live. I mean, so many of these conversations, probably the same exact conversation that we're having right now. So many of these conversations are happening at the very same moment. And so I think that we're on the cusp of a revolution of change that is really beautiful. And sometimes it takes awful things happening in order for us to figure out where we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. That was amazing. Alexis?
Yeah, I learned two things this year as a CEO. I think the first is that we just can't waste time, right? That we can't afford to be incremental. We can't afford to think about the kind of work that we need to do in a way that is playing small, because that just doesn't serve any of us. That to Beatrice's point, these things, these fundamental things that are systemic require transformative change. And if we're going to meet these moments and meet the opportunity that 2020 gave us, and lead in that moment, it means we actually have to be thinking big about systems. And the fact that I think all four of us are having a conversation that really is at the core around stigma, right? We're talking freely about, menstrual pads and vaccinations and abortion, ways that are like things that real people deal with, but we are normalizing the conversation by having that. That is really transformational, I think, for me. The other thing I learned is that I will never feel as free in a job as I do right now, to be my unapologetic, authentic self. And I don't think I knew what freedom meant. And if I have bosses, I've got a board of directors, I've got, stakeholders and, communities that I have to be responsible for, but knowing that I'm doing it in pursuit of making sure that my patients are free has just given me a level of centeredness, so that when I show up for my staff, I am also empowering them to be their free, authentic selves. And that is really, it's really powerful to see that kind of come to life. And so, be free and be bold, I think is really what I would have to say.
Yes. Okay. And Meena?
That's both are tough acts to follow, because both of you put that so beautifully. I could not agree more. To build on what Beatrice said, I think, my biggest learning is trusting myself and trusting, my team and our ability to do what we do best, which, to build on, what Alexis was saying, is to be bold, to, demand, what you want to see in the world, to keep your foot on the gas, to know that we have this urgent, critical moment, and we have a role to play, and we can play a role, we can have power, we can do and make change in the world as we want to see it. And I think, frankly, a lot of that is due to a lot of folks working really hard for many, many years to make it possible for us to sort of rise up in this moment, but also really coming out of the BLM protest from last summer, right? And the real reckoning that I think, not only because of COVID, but because of that moment that, our nation has confronted in a serious way. And I think, for me, it's really about, what role are each of us going to play as we sort of come out of this moment, right? And to Alexis's point, right, we have to keep our eyes on the ball, stay bold, stay, have faith in our ability to see that freedom for ourselves, in the world through the work that we do. And I think, is like, sort of corny as that may sound, to the very point of this conversation, we're seeing it, right? We're seeing culture shift, we're seeing dialogue shift in ways that we've never seen before, including around, as she said, like stigma around periods and abortion, right? Like, let's keep being loud and screaming this and being more bold and talking about what our lived experiences. And I just hope that coming out of this, we will be able to do that together in a way that, we're able to see that, collective change. And there's no other way for that to happen, right? We know that. And I feel very hopeful. And it's just about, making sure that, for example, folks that made bold commitments last summer are following through. And we're already seeing that some folks are not following through, right? So let's have that conversation. So it's really, I feel like, building on what Beatrice said too, it's just the resilience and believing in that and seeing that we are resilient, and the humanity in it, and the the community in it and that is necessary for resilience and power building. Those are the biggest observations, I've had and what gives me so much hope in the years to come.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Meena, Beatrice, and Alexis, for your time today. This was an amazing conversation. And to everyone watching, RED has tons going on this month. So head on over to red.org/summer, where you can get involved in other cool stuff this summer, donate, or just learn more about their work and ways to fight against pandemics. Thank you guys so much. I'm Phoebe Robinson. Bye.